So good evening, everyone. I'm Sweekriti Jadon, Center Head, Jamshedpur Management Association, and on behalf of the entire GMA team, I extend a very warm welcome to all of you on our yet another enriching session of T.E.A, that is Transformation, Experience, and Awareness Talk Series. Today's session is on the new world disorder, how geopolitics is shaping the global economy, a subject of great relevance in today's rapidly evolving global landscape. We are honored to have with us Mr. Anil Trigunayat, former ambassador of India, who will lead today's discussion and share his invaluable insights drawn from decades of diplomatic experience. And we are equally privileged to have this session moderated by Professor Giridhar Ramachandran, who will lead the session. Professor Giridhar Ramachandran is a Stanford certified life design educator, Associate Dean XLRI Online Learning, and Chairperson of the Academic Council of Jamshedpur Management Association. With over 20 years of experience across industry and academia, he's passionate about applying analytics and quantitative methods to solve business and social challenges. He has successfully led global projects in marketing, manufacturing, and supply chain for leading brands like Ford, P&G, IBM, and Dell, focusing on building analytics capabilities from the ground up. A PhD from IIT Madras, his research explored social interactions and community engagement. With that, I now invite Professor Giridhar Ramachandran to introduce our distinguished speaker and lead the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sweekriti.
My pleasure, sir.
Good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to today's session hosted by the Jamshedpur Management Association. It is my distinct honor to introduce a highly accomplished diplomat, thought leader, and someone deeply respected in international strategic circles, Ambassador Anil Trigunayat. Ambassador Trigunayat has been a professional Indian diplomat for over 3 decades, serving India's national interests across continents from Asia to Africa, Europe, and Americas, including Russia and the USA. Prior to his superannuation in 2016, he served as India's ambassador to Jordan, Libya, and Malta. He has studied in Agra, Kumaon, and Jawaharlal Nehru University. He has also done research at Oxford University on WTO and regional trading blocs. Ambassador Trigunayat is a regular commentator on foreign affairs and a prolific writer. Currently, apart from his association with various think tanks, strategy groups, and chambers of commerce and industries in India and abroad, he is a distinguished fellow with the prestigious Vivekananda International Foundation, heading their West Asia Experts Group. He has recently been honored as a distinguished fellow with the oldest military think tank, United Services of India. His key areas of interest include West Asia, Africa, and Russia, and serving India's interests in conflict zones. Until recently, Ambassador Trigunayat has served as an independent director of the board of WAPCOS, a mini Ratna company. Following that, government has appointed him as an independent director on the board of NTPC, which is the largest power producer and a Maharatna company. He is a peace ambassador with Unity Earth Australia, as well as a Rotarian serving the society to the extent possible. Interacting and addressing the youth has been his passion, and he has been invited by a large number of universities and academic and professional institutions to give talks, including under the Distinguished Lectures Program of Ministry of External Affairs. Apart from penning hundreds of articles, opinion pieces, research papers, and commentaries on foreign policy issues and economic diplomacy in leading magazines and newspapers, he has recently edited a book on evolving security dynamic in West Asia and India's challenges, published by VIF and Pentagon Press, and is available on Amazon. His second book, West Asian Dynamics and Indian Imperative, has also come into print recently. As the world moves from a unipolar to a multipolar order, we are witnessing tectonic shifts in power dynamics, wars, trade discussions, energy realignments, digital sovereignty battles, and a growing need for strategic autonomy. Right? Understanding these forces is not just a matter for diplomats. I think it is increasingly relevant for business leaders, students, professionals, and citizens. So please join me in welcoming Ambassador Anil Trigunayat to share his insights on this evolving global landscape. Thank you, sir, and over to you.
Thank you, Professor Ramachandran, for that very kind introduction. It is my great pleasure to participate in this discussion organized by the Jamshedpur Management Association. I have been associated with AIMA since at least 1990 and have been a regular member and been participating in various events there. Today, we are discussing something which appears very obvious. That is the dysfunctional international system and a global disorder, or something, a kind of a transition between an emerging order and a decaying order. Interestingly, as you mentioned, that the world has gone through the bipolarity that was after the Second World War, to unipolarity after the disintegration of Soviet Union, and then now we are looking at some kind of a multipolarity once again emerging as various centers of power coming along. I personally feel that with the Sino-US, that is China and US contestation, which is acquiring global dimensions, it will be extremely difficult for them, and given the kind of divergent philosophies that they have in terms of governance, in terms of the kind of world order, China often says the rules-based order, by whom, for whom. I mean, that is the kind of a thing. But we can understand if the countries like China have a disregard for that. But this global order has actually been decimated by the countries themselves, which are the ones who crafted it in the post-World War II. I mean, for example, whether it is United Nations Security Council, whether WHO, whether it is World Trade Organization, or any other institutions which has a global relevance, they have been basically sidelined and undermined by the very powers that were supposed to protect them. The unipolarity today, unfortunately, and unilateralism has become a fashion. The defiance of the international rules and regulations is so common that you shudder to think and even how to refer to it, because there is no recourse. You go to the WTO as far as the trading is concerned, and you don't find the adequate number of judges that the Americans have refused to provide. And even if by mistake some judgment comes from there, that is not adhered to by various countries, be it China, be it United States. United States has been the biggest violator of it in any case. So in that kind of a situation, what we are looking at today is that there are multiple smaller groupings that have come about. Whether you call it BRICS, there is a G7, of course, there is a G20 with some economies, major economies of the world. Then you have various free trade agreements, the bilateral agreements, the trilateral agreements, the quadrilateral agreements. So they are all serving a limited purpose. But despite that, it is important that we have some kind of a global rules of the game. And those that will take some time to evolve. Now let us look at the four major, basically, black swan events, as I call it. Number one, we had pandemic, which impacted the whole world, basically. The global value supply chains were disrupted. That led to further contestation between China and the United States and the West and the East in that sense. There is a greater pivot towards the South and the East, especially in the economic sense of the term, as we have the robust economies like India and China driving the growth models in this part. But this pandemic, which hit from the poorest to the richest country, we have seen it. Many of those countries continued to follow the principles of essentially looking after their own interest and looking after their geopolitics. While the world was suffering, for example, Western countries were hoarding the vaccines that they were never going to use for themselves. They were using a very different kind of vaccine, but they were keeping it. For example, Covishield was kept 800 million doses by the United States, even though they just used the Pfizer vaccine for themselves. They were keeping it for a geopolitical purpose. That is the point when India came into for the rescue of a very large number of world, providing vaccines to over 100 countries, the medicine to other countries. And that's what we called Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, or the vaccine Maitri, or Vishwamitra kind of a thing that India talks about. So that gives India a very big fillip. Now, it shows to you that every adversity also opens certain new vistas of engagement with the world and gives you a certain heft. In this pandemic, in my view, there were four H's that every country in the world had to confront and deal with. Now, those are also the opportunities. Now, the first H is hunger, for example, which was a very major problem. Food security has become a very big issue. The second was habitat, the climate change. That is something very big. And third one is health, which is also equally important. And that was the pandemic brought to the fore that there has to be a global solidarity if we have to contend with these kind of recurrent crises that will keep coming. And then the last fourth H was the basically the high tech, because you need technology to overcome all these challenges, and for which again international collaboration is required. Then you come, while the impact of the pandemic was still not over, we were saying we had this Russia-Ukraine war, the Eurasian war, which has created another kind of a dynamic. Nobody expected that this war will be there. Everybody was thinking that the war will happen in the Indo-Pacific between China and the United States. The Europe was not supposed to be on the brink of the war, but it happened, and we have seen it. Why it happened, you can justify either side's viewpoint that we are not doing here today. But I see that what are the impacts of this? How it played out eventually. What the United States and the West did was they cut off Russia from the Western financial system, confiscating their $390 billion, which kept in their banks, and cutting them out of the SWIFT, which is called the weaponization of the financial instruments. And today you are seeing often comments coming out from President Trump that de-dollarization he'll not tolerate and impose hefty fines on the countries that indulge in alternate currency mechanisms or try to do something. But they are the ones who created it, frankly. So what does Russia do, which is also, again, the largest country in the world and which has largest arsenal of nuclear weapons? What it tried to do was it weaponized the food, fuel, and fertilizers. So this is the 4F syndrome. Now, it had a great impact on the rest of the world, more so on the countries, developing countries, whom we call as Global South. And every country was impacted a great deal by these 4Fs and will continue to do that. And these are the ones which are going to define the kind of world order that's going to come forth. The Russia-Ukraine war, despite 3 years, has not yet ended. It is a war between the West and Russia, as is normal, because Russia considers it that way. On the other hand, then, we see while this was also happening, you had the Middle East war. That is yet another major challenge. Now, here what you are looking at is after 2 years of carpet bombing in response to terror attacks of October 7 by the Hamas, the Israelis are not bothered. So today you are looking at the simultaneous wars, long-term wars that have happened, and they're happening, and they're continuing, and they're not able to control them. But they are impacting every country in the world, irrespective. The economies are impacted, the supplies. For example, Sustainable Development Goals that were crafted and they were supposed to be completed by 2015, then moved on to from Millennium Development Goals to Sustainable Development Goals. And then we see here that nothing is happening by 2030. I doubt very much that we'll be able to achieve any of those goals because nobody is focused on that. Everybody is focused on arming, rearming, wars, and conflicts. There is no mechanism whereby these conflicts could be controlled. The countries that could have some heft are also part of these engagements and are directly or indirectly involved in this. Then it was further graduated into, we have seen the Israel-Iran war, that everybody shuddered that it should not happen because it was going to have a very major impact, especially on the supply chains for the oil supplies. Fortunately, it was limited in scope and it was managed quite well. But still, it is not over. You never know how things are going to play out. And once again, Israel or Iran might become more adventurous. So we are looking at it from that point of view. So what is it showing you? Disruption, disorder, dehyphenation, and defiance of the international law, or whatever you call it, the rules-based order. Look at the joke of this rules-based order. In the Indo-Pacific, we all say that there should be a free and open Indo-Pacific. There should be a rule-based order. There should be a respect for the UNCLOS, which is the United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Seas. And there, what is happening? We are seeing that China, which is a signatory to the UNCLOS, does not follow it. America, which did not ratify the UNCLOS, tries to enforce the UNCLOS. So that's the dichotomy and paradoxes of the international behavior of the various major powers. So you have these wars that are going on, and in the meantime, climate change, which is a very major challenge for the world, has been left to the side. The reason is simple. The United States, which is the largest polluter and the biggest country, biggest economy in the world, decided once again to walk out of the Paris Accord. So America is no longer part of this. Now, this is something that causes a major problem for everybody because we don't live on an island. It's the earth. Every country's pollutants impact the other countries also one way or the other. So this is all, we are all into it together. But if the biggest countries are not part of it, then you have a very major problem. More importantly, when we talk of green development, sustainability and all that, we must not forget that there is a green apartheid. The developed countries were supposed to provide an X amount, that's say $100 billion in the beginning. Today, it's come to something like $1 trillion. So $100 billion, that is 2015 onwards. They've never provided that amount of money. They own the technologies, they would not part with the technologies. So you are looking at a problem, the countries like in the global south, if they wanted to do something, export something, they will have to not only be subjected through a disadvantage of exporting those things or manufacturing those things because you don't have the kind of technology that you require to even pass the entry into their borders. And then while it's all happening, Mr. Trump happened. And when Mr. Trump happened, you see the kind of topsy-turvy this world has become today. He says, I don't like wars. I want to end all wars. He has not been able to end any war, but he takes credit for everything. So he wanted to take credit for India, Pakistan. He wanted to take credit for Israel, Hamas. He did stop it. And he wanted to stop the Russia-Ukraine war. That has not happened as yet. So what he comes up? He comes up all the time with these kind of threats that I'll impose tariffs because it's the biggest market in the world. Every country wants to trade with America. And therefore, he thinks that he's being taken for a ride without realizing the nuances of the international trade because trade is not a one-way street. It is a two-way street. It also does not mean that it is a zero-sum game, that I export $5 worth of things to you and you will export $5 to me. It depends on the kind of things that you export or import or the kind of things you manufacture, which kind of place you become. But he is driven by this MAGA, make America great again. Many people say Mawa, Mara, different kind of epithets that have come out. But MAGA is a big constituency. That means bring back the jobs, bring back the companies, bring back the investment, and create tariffs for those countries which are doing unfair trade practice. It calls India as a tariff king. Most countries were forced into submission for doing some kind of a bilateral trade deals. Good thing about Mr. Trump is he does not discriminate. And if anybody knows Hindi, you know it's called Samdarshi. He looks at everybody with the same eyes or one eye. That is, whether you are a friend, you are an enemy, or you are a frenemy. So for him, everybody is equal. He has imposed 35% duty on European Union. He did with Vietnam 20%, 40% like that. He's doing with Mexico, which has closest partners, or for that matter is Canada. Now, so for him, everybody is equal. He cut a big deal with China for the time being, but they hope to do it because they deal with power. If you are strong, you can negotiate. As far as India is concerned, we are also discussing on this kind of a deal with him, and hopefully something will work out. You know, what he looks at it what he wants to look at. He looks at it from the goods export-import perspective, not the services exports. Services exports, India is very good. More than 67% of our GDP come from that. And USA is a leader in services sector, and they have a surplus with us in that regard. But you will not neutralize that with the goods. So we have to reduce, we have to buy time. In my view, what most countries are trying to do today are trying to buy time. 3, 4 years, as long as he is in the White House, it's unpredictable. I mean, unpredictability is biggest strength or foolhardiness, which is disrupting the whole system everywhere. You can't be sure what will be tomorrow. Suppose you sign a trade deal today, he can go out and do something else. Now, suddenly, out of the blue, when the BRICS summit happened in Brazil, he imposed tariffs on Brazil and also on the BRICS countries. He wants to say that 10% tariff, I'll put 100% tariff on the BRICS countries if they adopt a currency against US dollar. Now, it is a very, very difficult situation in which the hegemon in the world is trying to impose its will. The other hegemon, China, is trying to restore itself somehow so that it can become number one. So this kind of a race that is going on between these countries, where does India stand in that? In my view, so far we have tried to play cards very well. We promote dialogue diplomacy, we promote no era of war. We want to deal with all countries, have maximum countries as a friend. And we say that we try to do our foreign policy in a way which is value-based, which has Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam as its driving philosophy, which has Vishwamitra as its quest to be a friend of the world, and which wants to become a voice of the global south. So when you want to become the voice of the global south, you got to stand with them on everything. So that's where India today is coming. Fortunately, we have become the largest country in terms of population. We are the biggest democracy. We are the fourth largest economy today and the fastest growing major economy in the world. And we want that to do that. That's why we did not want to expand this war beyond 4 days with Pakistan after achieving our objectives. So this is something that India is trying to do. It's trying to develop friendships and various groupings of being a part of nearly every group. Now, many people would argue that you are expending your energy or not getting adequate benefits. But this is something that a decision, a call has to be made. Exactly what are the cost benefit analysis in different things is, because you don't know how much in this kind of a world which is uncertain totally, as they call VUCA world, volatile, uncertain world. It is, one does not know how things are going to pan out. Whether it will be again a Cold War 2.0 kind of a scenario in which one bloc will be led by China, the other by the United States, and in between there'll be a large number of countries believing in a strategic autonomy, which country like India could, if it plays its cards well, could be a leader of. So if you want to be a leader or be a third pole, you will have to basically deal with that in that particular dimension. Now, we have to see that how this various permutations, combinations that are being played out today. So it is a difficult task for a country. A country like India could manage it so well. I mean, we are buying Russian oil to ward off the sanctions that US has imposed on Russia, as well as to meet our own energy requirements. Because without energy, your industry cannot grow, your economy cannot grow, and therefore it is extremely important for us to do what is good for us. At the same time, we continue to think of the global goods and global commons and try to provide them at every forum. We had the G20, which was a good thing for us, because when we had it, we had an opportunity to lead from the front, especially for the Global South. All their issues, we did 3 virtual Voice of Global South summits and asked them what they want, not what any consultant could write a big report and tell you that these are the requirements. But everybody spoke what they wanted, and India tried to plow their back into the system and fought for their rights. It also made from G20 to G21 its presidency, which means that brought African Union, which represents 55 countries, to be a part of the G20. This is what I personally feel was our biggest achievement as far as the G20 system is concerned. But all organizations, everybody is watching what is happening, and let us see how it eventually plays out, because it is a time, it's an opportunity, as I always say. Any kind of a disruption is also an opportunity. We got to be agile in our diplomacy, firm in our resolve, and also have a clear set ideas that how we want to become a Viksit Bharat or 2047. That's very important because there will be laggards. There will be countries that will try to pull you down, try to put you into some kind of wars. And that is what we have to avoid and evade. So I'll stop here and I'll be very happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And I think you kind of set the context very eloquently. And I think in a way, all of us can understand by putting the different pieces in context over the overall problem. Right? I think, and that's something that we all definitely need to know. So I have a few questions, and then we will. I'm sure this is a topic a lot of us will have a lot of questions about. But I have a few questions. One is primarily around how you saw India as positioned here. So, do you see this as a moment when India can be emerging as a moral or a strategic leader for the global South?
Well, that's precisely what we are trying to do. You see, India has always stood for the cause of the uh, global South, as they call developing world. It happened even when we were very poor and weak in 1947 onwards, when we started the non-line movement against colonialism, against the apartheid and all those major issues, which over time converted into developmental issues. So India has started its own high-tech program, as you know, under which Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program, under which about 161 developing countries are provided assistance and training. And so that is one of the pedestals that has continued to serve us for now nearly 60 years. And then now came the question of China is a very major player in the global south also. They also want to become the leader of the global south. And if you remember, even during the NAM days, they came from behind and wanted to join there. So India today is trying very hard to become a part of the global south and be a leader with them. Because most of the countries in the global south today, although may not have the capacity, but if a country like India, which does not have any neo-colonialist designs, which has a benign foreign policy, is respected by most countries. We have to play, of course, we don't have deep pockets, but going forward as our economy grows, we'll have more money dispensable for providing assistance to other countries. But even within our limited means, we have been doing superb job in that sense. Much more can be done, there is no doubt about it. So India is looking to become, because see, I don't see India being a part of either the Western bloc or the Chinese-led bloc. We have to have our own, and there are a large number of countries, and many of them, including the countries in the Middle East who are very rich, especially the Gulf countries, also follow the strategic autonomy. So they align with us in that dimension. So I think that India is in a very good spot today. You see, the Americans think that India is good for them because it can counter China. China thinks that India's strategic autonomy is good because you are not aligning well with the USA. Russia thinks that your strategic autonomy is good for you because then you can counter China. So Russia and China are close together, but at the same time, when question comes to Russia is a very powerful country and a very proud country. So they don't want to play a second role, but because of this war, they'll have to perforce do that. So for that, to counter that, they need India. So that's I think India is in a sweet spot. It's a very difficult position to sustain for too long, no doubt. The way things are moving, we have seen it after Operation Sindoor, that not many countries, openly called out Pakistan or supported India's Operation Sindoor. So that is something that we have to see. But if you are a power, if you have a strong will and you know what your national interest is, and the countries that are hurting you, you've got to retaliate. And India has shown that.
So you in this you talked about a few and you touched upon a few things like the US-China rivalry, the Ukraine-Russia conflict, the Iran-Israel tensions, and even economic protectionism. So and that whole thing about UN and other bodies weakening in their influence. So in your view, what are the deeper forces that are driving this? Is this a case of like a pendulum swinging to its extreme? And or are we seeing a more fundamental transformation? In other words, will we go back to what we had earlier in a view, or it is a completely different world we will also be looking at?
Well, personally, I think that we cannot go back to the old system completely. Of course, you can't throw the baby with the water. So that is something that is what. But unfortunately, because of again those very major powers, these institutions have not been able to reform and reflect that where do they stand. A UN Security Council still reflects the mindset of the 20th century post Second World War when there were victors and the vanquished. Today, India is a very big player. Brazil is a big player. South Africa is a player. So other continents are not even represented there. So P5 countries don't want reforms to be done. And if there are no reforms, obviously it will lose its relevance. And they are the ones who are going to impose or some kind of a old order. So if the institutions are not robust enough and the countries don't follow the diktat, then it is very difficult to follow that order. So there should be some kind of another order. But since it all happened because there is no balance of power today. See, at one time earlier, there was a balance of power, things moved. So China is trying to create that balance of power. That will be good or bad for the world, we don't know.
And geopolitics can feel like it operates at a 30,000 feet level, but it is clearly shaping industries, policies, and even career paths, right? So I would like to invite your thoughts on how this evolving global order is creating, or even say accelerating, new kinds of roles and opportunities. For example, what are some emerging fields or career areas you believe are directly shaped by current geopolitical trends, like say energy transition and diplomacy, climate diplomacy, or things like that?
Yeah. Yes, you are right. Absolutely. I mean, now today everybody is talking about sustainable development because we are really um, sitting on a ticking time bomb, frankly, as far as the climate change is concerned. And there is no planet B. I mean, we have to survive here, we have to live here, we have to. So people like Trump can put it back by a few more years, but there is a general uh, understanding and some kind of uh, strategy to deal with these issues to some extent, to bring back. India, for example, is in the lead today. I mean, renewable energy has become a major area which will continue to be very a robust area for new developments. But there again, we have to see if you are talking of solar panels, you are talking of solar energy, you got to also think of what happens to how do we dispose of those solar panels later on? Will they not become further contaminate? So that's where technology will have new areas open up for others. Today, we are living in an era of technology, basically, artificial intelligence, quantum computing. Those are new areas that are coming out. Many of those one does not know. So the whole world that we are into it today, the predominance will not be decided simply by your economic heft or by your military heft. It will be defined by how technologically advanced you are. And that's where we are going to see a technological competition. And that's precisely are the new areas in which the countries have to work. Even in the financial sector, you have the fintech that's going to operate increasingly in that. So I think that newer areas are emerging, uh, and the older areas are being also automated to a great deal, including the wars. The fighting the wars has become very different. This time, as you know, and even our war, we did not cross the border. It was all from the sitting in your own country, you are hitting each other. Now, that is the kind of things that are happening like Mahabharata in the past.
And in fact, you could even say the tech rivalry is the new Cold War. We saw how DeepSeek was built primarily because
Yes.
of trust compulsions.
I mean, I think that is something that we should have been doing it because we are very good in IT, but we haven't come. So see, we have to invest a great deal in R&D, both the private sector and the public sector. We are doing only 0.6, 0.7% of the GDP, which will take us nowhere. So you can do the software servicing and all that, but if you don't produce the original stuff, it's going to be very difficult for us to compete. And without that, you will again be dependent. We miss the industrial revolution, and we should not miss the industrial revolution 4.0.
True. Thank you, Master. I will now turn it to questions. I'll request the audience to type it out in the chat box, and so that I can sequence it out.
So Mr. Gaurav Marwa has some queries. Gaurav, sir, please.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Very good evening to Anil, sir. And thank you for your for the wonderful insight given by you, a very summarized way, encouraging us to think in agile ways. So my question to you is, do you see globalization actually taking a U-turn, given the fact that globalization was based on the basics of business, having more customers and getting things produced cheaply elsewhere and only making profits? I mean, that was what globalization was all about. But the basics of this, I think, are getting somewhere they have got distorted, with China being a strong, formidable, knowledgeable economy, and the dynamics of this has changed. So do you see that going ahead, we will see more of protectionism and this globalization taking actually a U-turn or a backseat, sir?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's a very good question. I must say that what we are witnessing today is increasing protectionism. Because when you say make America great again, like for example, President Trump told Apple not to manufacture in India. He's telling all the foreign companies, the American companies, to get back to the country, invest in not in other countries. And if you are going to, even he told Elon Musk not to manufacture Tesla in India. So if that is the kind of situation, that means definitely that is deglobalization that is taking place. On the other hand, there is also reglobalization slowly in a different format taking place. Because if you don't have the global rules of order or rules of engagement, if they are not created in a robust manner, the globalization by itself will have a lot of constraints. And that's precisely what we are witnessing today. I mean, creating tariffs. Tariffs was no longer, I mean, after the GATT and WTO, the tariff was a passe. I mean, no, people thought that they're not going to be tariffs. You could have the countervailing duties, you could have ADs and others, but this kind of a thing, or creating non-tariff barriers. So that is also a part of this. Now, China, for example, you mentioned. China is a peculiar case. India and China's GDP were nearly the same in the 80s. Today, China is 5-6 times bigger than us. And even though it slowed down a little bit, but the bigger economies slowed down is also a pretty fast this thing. Now, here, China was actually promoted by the Americans and the West to this level. They provided them all the opportunities, everything. Today, China has 60-70% of the part of the global value supply chains, especially in the critical minerals today. No other country can compete with China. I was seeing several charts in which anywhere you look in, every kind of a parameter that you look at, China is on the top and the other countries are way behind. So this is something that we need to understand that. So initially they said that there will be a decoupling with China. Then they realized that you are hurting yourself. You can't cut your nose to spite the face. And so they went back. It will not be decoupling, it will be de-risking. So these are the kind of things that will continue to go on. But let me tell you that despite the globalization that happened, or as we understood it, the countries of the global south always suffered. So therefore, it is also very important that there are new groupings which can be on various, like India has started its transaction mechanisms with 20 to 23 countries. We have signed the UPI, and that we are doing the bilateral trade with those countries and our bilateral currencies. Transaction costs are minimized, risks are minimized. So all those things will simultaneously go on. Today, every country, India says India first, America says America first, China has China first, Russia has Russia first. So if everybody has a first, then obviously the globalization will take a hit to some extent, except to the extent that we will continue to have complementarities with various countries and various markets in that sense. But of course, the rules of the trade will continue to play very harshly.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Shreyosi Poddar has also raised hand.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for the informative and great talk. It really broadened all of our minds and helped all of us know more about the geopolitical situations which every country is currently facing. I have a question. Do you think that because of the simultaneous wars and also Trump being in presidency, will World War III start? And if it does start, will India indulge in the war or won't? And how will it handle its own interests?
That's a very good question and very difficult question to answer, madam. But crystal gazing, one thing we have to grant to Trump, that irrespective of his, very uncertain, unpredictable behavior, he is a man who is really against the wars. He likes to talk a lot. Big statements will come out of it, but he really does not like the wars per se. So he does not want to put United States into wars. Now you will probably refer to that he came and bombed Iran recently. That was against his wish. But frankly, that was a managed affair. I mean, if you were to read it a little more carefully, you will understand that it was to try and stop the major war between Iran and Israel going beyond a point and to protect Israel. That was in that context also. So they did not hit everything that they were intending to do so. Similarly, they allowed Iran to also take revenge by hitting their base in Qatar. US base, the biggest base of US in Qatar, hit by Iran, and no further retaliation tells you a different story. But wars are going on, big wars. We are seeing the Europeans fighting with NATO. Americans have been supporting it all through against Russia. Now, that is the war that has the capacity, if it goes beyond the threshold of becoming a nuclear war. Once it becomes a nuclear war, then you will see a lot of conflicts. Today, I believe that there are about 93 or 94 conflicts globally which are there. So then you might see that many of the conflicts could conflagrate. As far as India is concerned, we want to keep out of this, any war or conflicts. In my view, the most smartest decision the government took was, after achieving its objective, to stop this war. Any war that you have takes you back by 10 to 15 years to 20 years economically. Now, you want to become a major economic power. China wants to become the top economic power. It does not want to get into a war directly. You have seen it. I mean, its behavior is very calibrated in every war, including in India and Pakistan war. Directly, it was not there, even though behind the scenes it was supporting Pakistan fully. So India does not want to go to war. But suppose a situation like that happens, then we'll have to fight and defend ourselves. And we have two major enemies on our border. One is China, one is Pakistan. And they can become, create problems for us. And then you're forced into a war. So that is something, but that will be a very disastrous kind of a situation. And I would hate to imagine it.
Thank you, sir. As you discussed about China, there is a query on that topic too that Mr. Ashutosh wants to ask. Sir, in the current geopolitical landscape, what steps do you believe both India and China can take to foster mutual trust and cooperation while addressing long-standing border and trade concerns?
China is our bigger neighbor. We have 3,488-kilometer border with them. We had found a way of living together after 1962. For 40 years, there was not a bullet exchange on the border. It was China is a hegemon. China is going to be our major challenge, not only on our border, but also across geographies, including in the maritime area. But then this happens between the two big growing powers. That's normal, the competition here. We have tried to manage the competition, to manage the India-China relationship quite well. And that is the reason, even after 2020 Galwan that happened, we sent our forces, about 60,000 of Indian soldiers and all the arms, ammunition, everything is there. They are eyeball to eyeball situation on the border. So China has understood that India is not going to take it down. And they will also be studying how we behaved and how we performed in this Pakistan conflict. So they do understand that India is a credible enemy for that, not something that they can walk over. So therefore, they are also looking to somehow slow down the process. Now, this month alone, you have seen our defense minister was there, our national security advisor was there, our foreign minister was there, and for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, Prime Minister Modi may be going to China after 5 years. We did not have any interaction. We met, of course, on the sidelines of the international area. They have agreed that now we have this mechanism, which is called the Special Representative Mechanism, which has met almost 22, 23 times, which is NSA level in India, and their foreign minister and the CPC representative Wang Yi. So they will be meeting and start working on it. There are positive comments coming from China that they do want to resolve it. I don't know if it is only in the context of their holding the SCO summit where they want Prime Minister Modi to come, and afterwards, again, the business as usual will happen. But from India's side, it will not be business as usual unless China starts behaving. That's important. We have to also keep on inventing new areas in our diplomacy to deal with them. Suppose they don't behave, what are the options that we are going to take? Can we play Tibet card? Can we play Taiwan card? Can we play technology card? So we need to develop our own comprehensive power, which by itself will become a major deterrence.
Thank you, sir. I think you already answered this question, but I just want to repeat it. As Mr. Abhishek Yadav has asked that recently the Chief Minister of Arunachal Pradesh has said in an interview that Arunachal share its border with Tibet, not China, which actually triggered China. And in light of this, considering China's increasing assertiveness along the border, do you think India is fully prepared to deal with China's aggression, both militarily and diplomatically?
I think I answer a simple yes. China has this habit of claiming Indian territory, which is in Arunachal. They keep on changing names of the places into Chinese. So this always happens. So I'm glad that not as a diplomat, but definitely as an Indian, I think that the minister called it out. But at the same time, yes, if China can intervene into India and call any place its own place and try to play this, so we'll have to diplomatically also keep on irking them occasionally. And that's part of the game.
So Sonu Chandra, I want to ask that recently NATO has said that they will put more sanctions on India, China, and Brazil if they didn't stop business, that is oil business with Russia. What can India do in this situation, as oil is also necessary for a country's development?
It is USA which said it actually, not NATO. President Trump said this thing. And what I feel is that, as I said, that Trump is a totally uncertain person. I mean, he can do so. You can't stop it. He's saying 500% if you don't. But he forgets something. India's import of the Russian oil has essentially stabilized the oil market and the oil prices in the world over, not only here. What we do, we import now 42% of our requirement, we are importing from Russia. Now, our trade used to be $4, $5, $10 billion. Today, it is $67 billion trade with Russia. It's become quite big, and a lot of things are happening together. So what happens now? In that sense, what we were doing, we were importing this oil from Russia. We were processing it here in our refineries, and you'll be surprised, and that's what the Americans need to understand, that we became the largest supplier of diesel to the United States in this time, courtesy Russian oil. We also became very major supplier of petroleum products to Europe during this time, and then they have a major crisis. So this is trade, as you know, is not something that is unifocal and unidirectional. It is something that is multi-directional or multiple. So they just look at a small portion of the thing and wants to do that. Now, that is something that's not going to work. And if they do so, then you will see a greater financial polarization of the world becoming much more faster. We are already on it, by the way. We have already, with large number of countries, we have signed up these bilateral transaction mechanisms through UPI and other means and methods, and we are continuing to do so. So we are providing how those will be integrated into the system. That remains to be seen later on. New banking institutions are coming out. BRICS has its own development bank. The Russians, Chinese have come up with their own bank, AIIB, which is like a multilateral development bank on the same patterns as IMF and World Bank, much smaller in comparison. But still, those are institutions that are being developed. So we'll have to see how it eventually plays out. But hopefully, Trump will refrain from doing that because that's not going to help. Russians have also said BRICS currency is not yet there. As far as oil imports are concerned, that will create a major problem for us. Why were we forced to import more from Russia? Number one, Russia provided a lot of discounts to us. We saved about $25 billion in our imports in the last 3 years. More importantly, we also were able to become a major exporter of many of these petroleum products and refined products at the same time. More importantly, the major suppliers for us were from the Gulf. And the Gulf countries were forced by the Europeans and the Americans to supply, to make up the losses that they incurred from Russian oil gas supplies to them directly. So we were not getting it enough. Therefore, we had to diversify our resources. I think that if President Trump takes these kind of hasty and not really thought out decisions, then there will be more polarization.
Is this Sonal, who's also raised her hands?
Yeah. Hi. Good evening, sir. So, first of all, I would like to thank you for a very detailed and informative session on this geopolitical situation. So, my question to you is like, I'm currently working with one of the software industry, and I see like while my peers and colleagues are discussing about there are completely there are less projects which is coming from the US and other countries as we compare to like 5 years past before. So what is you can predict in future, like past 1 or 2 years down the line, how would be the situation of India based on the software industry?
Well, I think that is one of our biggest strengths. The Indian highly skilled workforce, especially in the software. But we also need to gradually upgrade our skills and get into the more, as I mentioned, into the R&D area, where your softwares, you are not only developing for them or writing codes for them, but writing codes for yourself to create some kind of a thing. Then only you can compete with them. So today what is happening is that they are the ones, they source the work to you, and then you are very happy with doing that, but they are making all the money, they're taking all the leads, they are becoming increasingly more competitive and leaders of the technology, whereas so many Indians are the ones who are providing all this assistance. So, of course, this will be used as one of the tools by them to browbeat India into submission. But I don't think that it is going to last very long because it will be like, cutting the nose to spite the face. So Americans will sooner or later realize. What we are looking at today is about 2 to 3 years of very uncertain times. And hopefully after 2, 3 years, we'll have some sanity in the system.
One more question, sir. So, what is the future for the startups, for the software in India?
You should tell me, actually. Government of India has its policies very clearly cut out that we will be the technology leader. But software industry is also by itself very evolved and going to move into very different kind of an orbit. With the help of the AI, with the quantum computing, all kinds of things, new supercomputers coming up forward. So there will be a lot of kind of new areas in which we have opportunities to excel. So I think that, but as you know, that we have also got we are third largest innovator nation, for example. The large number of big companies, billionaires, or these are there. But the attrition rate is also in the startups very high. And that is also due to various restrictions that have been imposed on certain countries for providing finances for the new startups. So so government has come up with a very major program. I mean, I just heard some 1 lakh crore or some money is being allocated for various developments in this area. And if that is really plowed back into the system as we are looking at it, so I think that we are very serious about becoming a major technological power.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, in 2-3 minutes, I'll have to leave.
Yeah, yes, I was just about to say that I know you have another engagement pretty soon. So I would like to take the moment to thank you so much. Thank you, sir, for your illuminating address and for, more importantly, patiently responding to our questions with a lot of depth and clarity. Today's session helped us unpack the complexities behind what we see as isolated global events, right? From erosion of multilateral institutions to growing protectionism, vaccine nationalism. So, and I think amid this uncertainty, there is a call to action, right? Especially for nations like us, nations like India, and for individuals like us. I think the disorder we are witnessing, like you said, isn't just chaos; it's an inflection point. I think, right? And I think this is also a moment to reimagine leadership, redefine alliances, and this this saying that goes, "Never let a good crisis go waste." Right?
Yes, very true.
So on that's I think how we, on behalf of Jamshedpur Management Association, I really thank you once again for your time,
Thank you.
wisdom, and your candid perspectives. To all our participants, thank you for being with us today, and let's continue to engage with the world not just as observers but as thoughtful contributors to the global conversation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thanks a
Professor
lot, sir.
Ramachandran. It's a pleasure. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Anil, sir, for sharing your deep and timely insights on today's shifting geopolitical landscape. And thank you, Professor Giridhar, for so gracefully moderating the session. Thank you to all the participants and the speaker and moderators for your time and engagement. We hope today's session left you with the greater clarity and curiosity about the forces shaping the world. We look forward to your presence in the future events. Also, I request the participants to kindly share the QR code, to kindly scan the QR code and share your feedbacks of JMA with us.